Hello, people of the reef keeping world. My name is Rich.
And my name is Ben.
And today we're going to have our friend Duane on, who's going to help talk us about Acropora Eating Flatworms and his system. And we're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff old reefers talk about. And I think it's very cool that Ben has got his own secret home lab behind him that he has ripped off from my secret home lab. So this episode brought to you by saltwateraquarium.com and powered by PolypLab. Hey, Duane, how are you doing?
Doing good. You guys, nice to see you again, Rich and Ben.
Yeah, good to see you. I'm doing okay. I dropped my kid off at college, so we're getting used to that. I think I'm happy that it's over.
Dry your tears.
Now we can get on with life.
Understand. Mine's going to the local community college and going to start paying rent next month. But
nice.
But anyhow, I'm doing trips without children, which is awesome after 18 years.
So, Richard, look behind me. Do you notice anything?
Yeah, that is how did you get that? That is someone
Jason Langer from Four Square Aquatics.
He took a screen grab from a long time ago
and sent me a shower curtain. That's your secret home lab.
That's fantastic. Oh, right, because there's the octopus thing he made me.
Yeah. There's the Nazi Hitler. It looks like Mr. Bill. Mr. Bill.
Which is the coolest thing in the world.
If I mess with it too much, it's just gonna fall.
These are the larger Pacific striped octopus having sex. This is awesome porno.
Yeah, that does it for me.
Ben, Duane, before we came on, you were going to tell a story, and then we said, wait. And then Ben took 3 hours to do the intro. Do you remember what you were going to say? Yes. I don't even remember.
So I was telling Ben, this fish tank is Richard Ross's fault, was what I exactly said. And what I mean by that is when I got into the saltwater hobby after being freshwater for nearly as many years as Ben's been in the hobby in general, that
you can't possibly be that old.
I was living in California at the time and was researching coral and reading like crazy. We didn't have all the forums. There was a local forum in the San Francisco area that Richard was part of. I think he mentioned it the other day. It was reefs.org, I think.
Bay Area Reefers.
Bay Area Reefers, yeah. And I joined that, and Richard said that he needed help doing his faux build-in wall. And I was a contractor at the time and said, I will come and help you for free if you just let me see your aquarium. And he showed me the secret home lab, his large fish tank, and his crawl space. I got a firsthand look at everything when I was getting into the hobby, and He tried to emulate my system after what he had been doing for years. And I started out luckily I actually was pretty successful with SPS right from the get-go because of all the reading I did. And
you originally helped Rich install that tank in his wall?
I built the lid over the fish tank. Yes.
I wanted a 2-foot door. I wanted a lot of access, right?
Oh, okay.
And I was having problems figuring out how to make the door work. Yes. I think I had the hinges and I kind of knew how to do it, but making it go was hard. And then Duane came over and he went, hey, and he pulled out the chalk line and went, snap, 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 blah, blah. There you go.
And his bookshelf was all out of square behind it. I did the construction part, Ben. You can't blame me on that plumbing disaster.
The stand is atrocious. Atrocious.
It's all good now, baby.
Yeah,
baby. So you were just barely into saltwater when you came over here that time?
Oh, this is gonna be fun.
Yes. Actually, You had a little CPR backpack you loaned me at the time.
That's right.
As a skimmer?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yes.
This was 18 years ago.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes, our children were like little toddlers playing together in his backyard with his giant tortoises and all of his animals that he keeps.
Yeah. The hobby's really changed in 18. The CPR backpack was really, I guess I haven't had a small tank in a long time, so I don't know what people are using now, but that was a great freaking skimmer.
I'm trying to remember what powered that. Was it a little Rio pump or was it air powered?
It was a Maxi Jet.
Maxi jet. Okay.
Rich had his modded with the air stone with the air pump on the side too. So it was a super injected CPR backpack.
Yeah.
Put a big limewood air stone in. I was just like, foam the crap out of it.
Yeah.
And now you got a tank that's how big is your tank?
It's 210 gallons.
And
standard 210.
210, and it's viewable from two sides like mine.
Yeah,
which
yeah.
I think is awesome. I think we may be the only. Do you know of? I think we may be the only two tanks like that. Do you know of anybody else who's got a?
Mark Levinson. Unfortunately for him, his isn't in the laundry room like mine.
But you can see through his.
Yes, yes. Well, if I were to hold the camera up high enough, you can typically see the dryer door open in my laundry room.
Oh, okay. And
as a pro installer, let me let you know that you're not the only people that have tanks like that.
it's good. I've never seen. Usually, people either do a full built-in, so it looks like a picture frame, or a peninsula. But having a long end and a short end, I haven't seen that much. But
yeah,
it's not that frequent, but some people get it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And
my first tank I started with the 120 was a little picture frame with all the grandiose trim around it, and it was a pain in the butt to work on.
Yeah.
And now you grow the shit out of corals.
Yep.
And you sell a ton of them, and locally, which is cool. And you and you hang out with Mark Levinson, who's going to be a guest on the show, I think next week, and do stuff with him. And I think you're kind of famous for scorching the earth of your tank every 2 years.
Yeah, I was actually, Facebook keeps reminding me it's been over 4 years since I've done it. I love the aquascape in this one so much. It's the first time in my reef keeping hobby, especially, that I ever aquascaped an empty tank that wasn't full of water, working in a murky cloud. And I loved it so much, I don't want to tear it down. I did threaten Terrence last spring that I'm ready to, and he told me I couldn't do it while we were beta testing the skies.
So what's the deal? You go through and every so often you kind of like rip everything down and redo it?
Yes, I treat it like a cichlid tank. I just break it down and restack the rock and throw everything all back in, and literally in 12 hours.
Yeah.
And he grows it up, and then he just goes in with like a weed whacker and just hacks all the corals to nothing, and then starts them up again. Like when I do it, I like pull up the big thing out because I want it to look all grown in. He doesn't give a shit. He just hacks it all back and lets it grow.
Basically, he takes a tank that anyone would like kill for, and he's like, not good enough, and he just redoes it.
I've achieved perfection. It's time to start over and make it challenging again.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Maybe you're done because it's been 4 years and you like this one.
I don't know. The Cali tort's getting pretty big back there, and I get bored of the same large coral all the time, and I don't know how to bonsai chop them. I'm not good at fragging, so therefore it's just easier to cut that thing down to nothing and start over.
Okay. We can show you how to bonsai frag if you're ever interested. I'll come visit. Thanks.
You help him build the lid, and then he's gonna come chop your crap up.
I've been up there. I spoke at the local club. That was fun. Duane's I slept in a trailer in his driveway.
Man,
it was pretty awesome.
It's Pacific Northwest camping at its finest.
It was great. That was a really fun trip. I think Josh and Stu were there, right?
Yeah.
There's a picture. I think that was the year I won the award. And there's a picture of me. It says AOTY YOLO.
I can do that too.
Yeah, it's a good time.
So Richard, what's going on with your tanks? Any new things going on with your tank?
I was gone, and just before I left, I changed the calcium reactor media. And while I was gone for a week, my alkalinity was dropping. And I was like, and I put up, I think on the Reefy Facebook, that I said, it is possible that I have filled my calcium reactor with two little fishies stacks rather than calcium reactor media.
Now, did you do that on purpose, or was it an absent-minded thing?
It turns out that I did not do that. There was another issue with the calcium reactor.
Okay.
So my calcium reactor, it's a Bill 1 calcium reactor. It's pretty great. Every once in a while, the CO2 will outpace. You know in the calcium reactor, how they've got in the middle, they've got that downspout that the effluent goes through and then comes up. I hate that because I want excess CO2 to bleed out. And when they have those, they don't bleed out well enough. If you put it right, if you just have a fitting at the top, then your recirculation of CO2 doesn't work either. So while I was gone, it's CO2 gapped. And it's such that it doesn't recirculate very well. That input, that exit for the effluent is just low enough where the recirculation pump kind of is going.
Yeah.
So it's not
like
really
cavitating.
recirculating. So I came home and I grabbed a drill and I about an inch below the top of the reactor, I just drilled a hole in that pipe that goes down.
Oh, what the hell?
And put it in, and now it can only gap this far. It can't CO2 gap enough to stop the recircuit pump. Does that make sense?
Duane, this dude's like a mad scientist.
But that's happened to me before, and it sucks. You go downstairs and it's like my alkalinity's dropping. Yeah, I can watch that happen in real time now because of modernness. But then it's like gapped, and it's like, this sucks. I hate. Then you have to open. Yeah, I even have like a bleed valve in it, so I can do it.
I gotta say though, I mean, the three of us have quite a bit of experience together, but just randomly drilling holes in your calcium reactor pipe, I don't recommend to anyone.
That's a Richard thing.
Well, it's not random. It was like, I understand what this problem is. And I thought about it on the plane. I was like, I bet, oh no, that's right. Because I got a camera in the crawl space, I put the camera on, and I actually found out right away that I could see the Carib Sea media that I used. So I knew I didn't screw up and put stacks in there. And then I looked and I saw the gap, and I was like, that fucking gap. So I had like 4 days to keep thinking about it. And I was like, it's not going to make any difference in the world if it doesn't go down that deep. If the effluent exit isn't that deep. I can't think of any reason why it needs to be that deep.
Oh, so you drilled a hole within the chamber itself?
Yeah. Okay. Let me draw it.
Okay. You're thinking you just drilled a hole in his calcium reactor?
No.
So I'm like, why are you drilling holes in the pipes of your calcium reactor? That's insane.
Go away, carbon dioxide. Oh, now he's drawing pictures.
I don't know what else to do but to draw it for you.
I think it was last week you guys were talking about alkalinity spikes and drops. Or no, 2 weeks ago, I just listened to the podcast yesterday, or your YouTube. I listened to it like a podcast while I'm at work.
I killed a clam doing that. A Hippopus clam from Bio.
And you were talking about what is an alkalinity swing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And my calcium reactor pump seized up last weekend, and my alkalinity went from 8.8 down to 6.7 and back up over the course of 2 days. That's a spike or a drop.
Anything die?
Yeah, that's pretty significant.
Anything die?
No, I have a couple burn tips on the Cali Tour. My large table of strawberry shortcake has one little dead branch, and it's discolored a tiny bit. But I'm just kind of crossing my fingers and hoping that's the worst of it. We'll see.
How long did that dip last?
About 72 hours from peak to drop to peak. I topped off my reactor. I thought it was just low on media. So when I topped it off and put it back together, I realized the impeller pump had seized up. And
just from too much scale inside the impeller?
From being just 6 years old, 4 years old, I bought it used. Doesn't matter. But when I opened it up, the impeller had actually swelled and seized up and is cracked and throwing rust.
What brand?
Magnetic debris. It's the Reef Octopus with the bubble or water blaster pump.
Yeah.
So I literally had to take my sander and sand the impeller back down and put it back in service while I'm waiting for a new pump to arrive. So I'm crossing my fingers that I have a bunch of polyfiltered polypaths in
I
the
wouldn't
sump.
think that would work, but yeah, that's
It
crazy.
fired up, and I'm just crossing my fingers that I don't nuke the whole tank in the meantime.
Yeah.
So
My reactor went from about 8.586 down to about 7.6 over the course of a week, and I saw one coral start to do some RTN on the undershaded side, and a little bit of a setosa started to go, but then I cranked it back up and it's fine. This is what I'm talking about,
yes,
right? So this is the effluent,
Okay.
yes,
right? And the recirc pump is this line here, right? So when the gap forms of CO2, it gets to about here, and then this recirc pump isn't getting enough water to keep recirculating. So I drilled a hole here.
perfect.
And so now it can't get that low anymore, and we're all good. And I think that problem will never happen again, even if I overdose CO2. But I still have about an inch, so it can keep recirculating like it's supposed to.
Yeah,
And then boom, the alk came right back up. So
that's kind of how
Design change.
the geocalcium reactors have that issue. The Reef Octopus has solved that with their design. So
what did they do?
they have in the lid, all the way at the very highest point, they have a 1/4-inch line that feeds back into the recirc pump. So that any gas that builds at the top is automatically sucked right back in and pulverized.
So mine does that too. Mine's got that. So this line here goes back to the recirc pump.
But it doesn't pull this.
The problem is if it's pulling the CO2, that's fine. But if for whatever reason there's excess CO2 and it's still bubbling through, right? So it builds up, it builds up, it builds up. And then the CO2 can't leave.
Yeah.
So that's why I drilled the hole there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know why it was made that way. Maybe I'll ask Bill next time I see him. But I want some recirculating. Oh, one of the reasons why the CO2 kept building up while I was gone is because of your Trident programming. Oh no, it's my addition to your Trident programming.
Oh, what have you done to my perfect programming?
You know, I added those alkalinity statements.
I don't think I've seen them. I haven't paid attention.
You did see them in the on the pH probe itself, right? You have your calcium greater than and less than statement.
Yeah.
Right. I put in an alkalinity greater than and less than statement as well. So if it's above 8.65 alkalinity, it turns off. It turns off the solenoid, the CO2 solenoid. If it's below 6.45, I'm sorry, if it's below 8.3, it turns on, right? So what happened was, it's an order of operations thing. For your Neptune people, the last true statement in the list is the one that the apex acts on, right? So it was calcium reactor pH greater than 655, then on. Calcium reactor pH less than 645, then off. Your regular calcium reactor, you know, your pH programming. Then I had the two alk statements. So the problem was my alk was dropping. So it was below the alkalinity of 8.3. And that was the last statement. So the CO2 solenoid was always on. It would not shut off. So it filled that until gas couldn't get out anymore because of the weird design of that effluent exit chamber. But now I changed the order of operations, and the last one is the low pH, is the less than pH statement. So if that happens, so that can't happen again now. It will always go off. So there, because I was also like, why is the calcium reactor pH, 6.2? It shouldn't be that low. And then I looked at the thing and I went, that's what it is.
So did you get any damage to your reef?
Just one little coral was losing a little bit. That was shaded anyway, so I kind of expected that to happen. And some Setosa that was getting stung got a little bit, started to run a little bit, but the alkalinity came back in like a day, and all of that seems to have stopped.
I mean, so these are great things when we can kind of have an accident and then correct the things and, you know, have very little damage due to that. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was starting to get nervous, you know, when it started hitting 7.8, 7.7, 7.6, I was going, this is low enough to make me nervous.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
I imagine how I felt when mine was at 6.8 last
Oh,
weekend.
yeah.
Oh boy.
Oh man.
Yeah. So
And nothing happened here. And in
Yeah.
the tank, the what is that tank? The
The
experiment
experimental tank.
your rental
every-
tank.
Yeah, the rental tank. Everything looks bomber in there. Everything looks great. So
Are you still on your
Nice.
your particular water change amount?
yeah, it's 30 liters a day.
Okay.
So that's
Nice.
a lot. This one, now I ran the line for freshwater as well. So we're not getting the pH swing. I mean, the salinity swing in there anymore, or nearly as much. And I desperately need Bob to come bring me water. I have to remind him again because I'm down to about 120 gallons.
You better call him now. It's a ways from here to Pakistan.
I called him 2 days ago. I'm going to call him
Yes.
again tomorrow.
His car's on fire.
No, not again. He must bring me waters. Waters.
So
He brings
so
it
on-
in a car.
In a truck. He brings it look,
just
a
giving
handful
Ben
at a time. In his mouth too.
He brings you about 20 gallons. He's like, I'll be back about 30 times. No one said it was an efficient operation.
No one said that. Boom.
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 Hey, Richard, this.
Ben. Yes, Ben. Ben.
Yes, listen. This,
Good to
this
see you in
podcast-
your good to see you in your quaff of Bee Gees inspired looks.
Oh, wait, I'm doing grease again. What the hell? I got grease stuck
I can
in my
tell
head.
by the way I use my walk.
Ladies, man.
No time to talk.
No, but listen, this show is partially brought to you by saltwateraquarium.com.
Oh, we like saltwateraquarium.com. Why, Ben? Why do we like saltwateraquarium.com?
We love saltwateraquarium.com. Look, they have a cleanup crew program that they're doing. That's all in-house. They don't have some other wholesale company. They stick their name on it. So they're controlling all the details of this. They don't send small little creatures. They don't have fish in the system, so it's fallows. They're trying to stay away from, like fish diseases coming in on stuff.
Yeah, and they ship them to you really quick. The cool thing, when I got my order from them, they had bags that had printed on the bag what the animal was. So it was really easy to tell what was what and where it was going in my lab. Saltwateraquarium.com also has all kinds of equipment. So any kind of equipment you need, you can get at saltwateraquarium.com, from pumps to lights to salt mix to additives to food, anything, they got it.
They're a one-stop shop, baby.
Yeah, baby. And they've got all kinds of programs where you generate buyback percentages. So you spend money there, you get a percentage back, and over time, that means you get free stuff. You can, if you're a first responder or a military vet, you get discounts for that. It's a small family-run company. They're great, and they ship really fast. I ordered some calcium reactor media from them, and it shipped out the same day. So
yeah, they have three
great.
locations across the continental United States, so they can get your stuff out to you fast.
Yeah. So check out the link up there. If it's up there, we have no idea if Snowman does that. And check out the link and go there. And if you are so inclined, drop them a note that said, "Hey, we heard about you from Reef Beef." That helps us out and helps them out, and everybody's happy. Boom.
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 Oh.
So on my end of things, I'm in the middle of an install, and we'll show a video here, but it's not that big of a tank. It's about like 24 by 30 by, I believe, 36 tall. I'll have to look that up, but it's in a commercial place. And I'm kind of doing a cool arch. We'll show the video. I'm doing a cool arch from the middle front of the tank. It's viewable on 3 sides, like a peninsula. It's coming off of a wall. And I used Marco Rock's E400. I'd never used this color before. It's called pink, but it's not pink. It's like a brick red kind of. It looks great. I like it better than the light gray stuff. But I'm cementing slowly, because I'm doing this severe arch to come all the way up to the weir box, to the overflow box. And so what I'm having to do is, and they've paid for all this, but I'm having to concrete one section at a time and come back a couple days later, do the next section. Because what I'm asking it to do physics-wise is kind of severe. And so I'm trying to take it slow and go way over. But that'll be cool. You'll see the video of it.
Is that going to be a reef tank?
Oh, yeah. It's in a, I guess, I don't know how they want to say it, but like a retirement community. I call it an old folks home, but I don't think that's what people call it.
Old bitches be old.
Yeah, people are old. But so, hey, let's talk about AEFW. I want you guys to talk, because can you believe this? In 78 years of reefing, I've never really had to deal with them.
Wait, you've been reefing for 27 years, is that right?
No, 85.
Because I think we need to, Aaron said we should have an anniversary party for you.
Really?
Yeah.
Man, it's oil of Olay. I use it every day.
Every day.
Man, that's a long time of reefing. I've only been doing it for 16 years, but I've been keeping glass boxes now for, I think, 31. So
Yeah.
That's a long
It's a long
time.
ways to go till you get to my 92 years.
apparently.
Okay, so background about acro eating flatworms. They're a flatworm that eats acros, which is why they're called acro eating flatworms. They're very hard to see. They lay eggs on the acro, and then they hatch, and then they chew on your acro. They can be very hard to diagnose. You have to look for their effects, which can include an overall discoloring of your coral, and also what looks like little bite marks. We'll hopefully get some pictures to throw up of that, because I have some pictures of that from an article I wrote about them. We started seeing them a whole lot in probably 2007, 2008. And they were bad. They were like a death sentence at the time. We didn't know what to do with them. We didn't know how they spread, and people were yanking their entire colonies. And, we talked about Monty eating nudies the other day. We were doing that with SPS. And it's even worse, because fragging them is tough, because the worms can be everywhere on the coral, and you don't really see them until the coral is dry. It starts to dry out, and then you can kind of get a look at them. As it turns out, they don't lay the eggs on live tissue. So that's good. If you can chop the coral above where there is, in a living tissue area, you're not going to bring any eggs with you. And nowadays you can dip for them, right? Well, let's whatever. Duane, you talk for a minute about them. You know about them too. You've had them, right?
Oh, yeah, I lived with them. You pretty much hit the nail on the head with them entering the hobby around 2007, 8. I ended up with them in this tank, or close to it, and was the president of our local club at the time, and was nice enough to share a local meeting with about 40 people, where I actually dipped and showed all the local Seattle area people what they looked like and how to dip for them and how to treat for them. I never fully did beat them at the time. I ended up breaking the tank down due to financial matters. I think it was in 2010, but I learned how to live with them pretty well back then. So
the article I wrote for it, I think it was in Reef Hobbyist magazine, was like living with the plague, is I think what it was called, because and I got this from some people, from Randy Donowitz actually in New York. He said, what he would just do is baste them, it turns out if you base the SPS coral with a big rush, or even use a power head, not strong enough to tear the tissue off the coral, but the flatworms they can get blown off into the water column, and various fish sometimes will eat them. Clownfish will eat them. A lot of wrasses will eat them. Some damsels will eat them, and they quickly learn, if you're basting, that the baster means food, and they'll eat them. I also have the sneaking suspicion that sometimes I think they have a preference of acros, and if you base them off and they get blown somewhere else, they may not find their way back to the acro before they starve. But I'm talking out my booty.
Not sneaking at all. They absolutely love Millipora as their number one favorite, which a lot of people go, well, I thought they love Acropora. Well, SPS. Millipora is their number one. They do like tenuous corals quite a bit. Some smooth skins. They surely don't like the Cali tort or the Oregon tort. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, I've never seen them on either of those.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, they love Millipora is the number one target because they have such hard coralite scoots, I guess you'd say, almost like a clam.
Yeah.
That the acro flatworms, especially the juveniles, can get down in there and hang on and hide better.
Yeah. So they're a nightmare for a long. And then Joe Waiulo in the 20,000 gallon tank used to get in with a garden hose of fresh water. So then we learned that you could hit them with fresh water and they would release as well.
Like stun them.
Yeah. And so he would go in and basically water the corals.
Wow.
Which is really funny. And both the pressure of the hose and the osmotic shock would make the worms go meh, and then they float off into the tank.
Tell you a little secret. I was talking with Joe about that 2 years ago, and I've actually been doing it in this tank since.
Yeah, fantastic.
I get my RO line, 1/4 inch line, and my turkey baster out, and it drops my salinity. It's 500 gallons. It's kind of stressful on the display tank until the water circulates out. But yeah, I hit it with my RO straight out of the RODI and blast the coral. I turn off all the power heads. I leave the recirc pump or the return pump on because I don't want the salinity in the display to drop too low. But yeah, I hit it with fresh water and then I turkey based it off, and both my hawkfish, all the wrasses, anthias, pretty much everything but my tangs will eat those acro flatworms in my tank.
I used to do it with the hose. Joe would just use garden water, tap water, because Joe is magical. At the academy, I would do it with a big RO hose and go down. I would use a garden hose though, because that looks cooler too. But and the same kind of thing to try to control them.
I was gonna ask, were you looking to get them into the water column and into down into the filter like a filter sock? Or are you really wanting the fish to eat them?
I count on the fish eating them. That's all I can do in this tank. I run the Clarity. I've been running filter socks for the last 6-7 years religiously because I need to keep them out of my grow tanks.
Right.
So anytime there's any question in the grow tanks, I start dipping. And believe it or not, in the last probably 8 years, I haven't seen any in my grow tanks. So the filter socks seem to be doing the trick, and I've learned to just keep them at bay and keeping them from wreaking too much havoc in the display tank. So
one of the things I used to do when I was struggling with them here was make sure the aqua colonies, this is, I think, where I started using super glue a whole lot to hold up colonies, because then I could just pop the colony off and dip it and put it back in the tank with a minimal of rigmarole and freaking out the coral so much. And that worked pretty good. You can get ahead of them with dipping. You get ahead of the eggs. You got to dip like once a week for 5 or 8 weeks to really get ahead of them, I think. And there's been some recent research about their life cycle, but I haven't seen anything completely sexy useful for us. So I think you can, they're not, I still see people sometimes on forums, they say, I've got acro eating flatworms, and I'll tear down your whole tank. And I don't know if I would recommend that again. That was kind of old recommendation. It's one of those, I think it's that kind of idea of like, you can win like with algae. It's like, if you got algae, figure out a way to control it. Don't tear down your tank. If you've got this pest, figure out a way to control it, because you can. It's a little work.
Yeah,
So
I mean, if you've got a little 32-gallon BioCube and you've been in the hobby for 10 months, well, sure, then go ahead and nuke it, burn it all and start over. But
Yeah.
in something like this, it would cost me 20 or 30 grand to build this back up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an exaggeration, of course, but you know what I mean. It would be a lot of time and energy.
So why would Salifert flatworm exit not work on them?
The same way it doesn't work on polyclad flatworms, apparently. They're just too large or different species. I don't know.
Okay.
They're different animals.
Yep.
You know, it's like why sex pheromones work on you but not on someone else.
Because I have a fan blowing on my hair.
I know, you fucking Robin Gibb. There's been a lot of products that are supposed to control acro eating flatworms. A lot of dips, levamisol and potassium permanganate, and nothing seems to Melifix or Julian's dip. What is that called?
Revive.
Works. Yep.
It stuns the adults right off, not a problem. Doesn't do nothing we found that I know of does anything for the eggs.
Nope.
So, you know, you can dip everything, even the bear that people were so happy, doesn't do anything for the eggs.
No.
So you can look for the eggs. They're tiny and they're orange. You can scrape them off, or you can super glue them, or you can cut above into the living tissue, like we said before. There's a new product out that was supposed to do something. I think it was wormwood, and that just looks like a Hail Mary pass that's got a 50-50 chance of.
Wait, that's an ingredient in absinthe.
What?
Isn't that an ingredient in absinthe?
Yes.
Huh.
But it makes your tank all murky, and then, you know, it's one of those things where some people report success and some people don't report success, and you have to do it a bunch of times. And
I mean, that almost sounds like putting a certain amount of gasoline in your tank would do about the same thing.
That's my feeling too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't use a product until a bulk of the experienced reefers I know would go, yeah, no, that's a worthwhile thing to try. You know,
yeah,
like the bryopsis
out of Europe that I forget, the KZ flatworm something that's an additive. And I've had a lot of people say, oh, it's great, it knocks their population back. And I look at it and I'm like, that cost me $150 to knock the population back and not actually treat my tank. So
Yeah.
no, I think I'll skip that route.
Yeah.
So
this new one was a real snake oil one that was making the rounds a year or two ago. It was made me very sad. But it seems there's a version 2 of it now, which also seems to have exactly the same non-support as the first one had. So Duane, if someone came to you and said I had acro eating flatworms, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to get to work. Just like you were saying with anything, it's kind of a beef of mine. If we were to talk about our reef beef, is just, if you're going to be in this hobby, you better be prepared to work. Whether it be dipping corals, kind of like you do, Rich. Sometimes if I have a millie that's struggling and I don't really feel like it can handle a freshwater bath with the garden hose, I will pop it loose and drop it into. I use the ME coral dip that's my local store has. Otherwise, Melifix would be my go-to. That I'd have to go to Petco to buy that off the shelf. But get to dipping and get to work, and then if you have a healthy ecosystem with stable alkalinity, your corals can handle a lot of abuse. They can handle a dip in that dip once a week without typically dying if you do it right, do it well. So
I'm sorry. Before Ben, we got to say this. SPS corals, acros, don't like freshwater dips.
Yeah.
Don't freshwater dip your acro, because we said, you could spray it. The whole point was that if you freshwater dip an acro, even if you pH balance it, the acro is really unhappy, even if it's like a 30-second dip. They just don't like it.
Yeah.
So the idea with inundating it with fresh water is that it's localized but transient, and it doesn't impact the corals in the same way as a freshwater
And
dip.
I guess in a disclaimer to get a little more detail, I'll turn off the flow of the pumps. I hit one coral with a little bit of fresh water, and I'm only leaving it in it's not a freshwater dip, it's a reduced salinity area of my tank. I turkey based it, and as quickly as possible, I'm getting those power heads turned back on because I don't want that coral to sit in a freshwater bath any longer than it has to.
Yeah.
And so, the healthier your tank is, the earlier you catch it, the more your corals can deal with that kind of stress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say it's funny because in the beginning when you're reefing, when you're a beginner hobbyist, you're just trying to understand what the ammonia cycle is and what equipment to get and all this. And once you've got that solidified, however many years or whatever it takes, really, even if you would call someone an advanced reefer or whatever, it's really like mitigating all the pests that you come into contact with, all the stuff we talk about. It's like, learning to look for them and what to do and do it as quickly as possible. Because if you sit around and go, well, damn, look at that Aptasia, like you better kill it. You better get to killing it because, or, oh, look at those acro eating flatworms. Like better know it, better start doing something about it because it doesn't get any better.
Oh, you're not joking.
Yeah. I'd like to know if the Paracalinus, the pink streak wrasse that I'm always talking about, picks at them. It's a very cryptic little fish that is picking at stuff all the time. It's possible. I mean, there's something that eats them in the wild, and it's possible that they pick at them too. So that's just one of the fish that I have all the time.
Are you sure it's not just thunder showers on the reef crest cleansing these corals?
It could be. Yeah. And I'm sorry, it's Pseudocalinus, not Paracalinus. Pseudocalinus. Under showers. Yeah, it's micro bubbling is what it is.
Yeah, there you go.
So is there like a feeling of which one is more futile, like Monopora eating flatworms or acro eating flatworms? Or Monopora eating nudibranchs?
I would despair way more having the nudibranchs than the acro eating flatworms.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've had
but they're also a little more rare, correct?
I don't know.
I haven't heard of any in the Seattle area in the last 10 years, but I've had them. I had them in a small tank in my office, and it was futile. I lost every money I had. It was. Yeah. I couldn't do anything about it.
Now, Duane, let me ask you: Are you hardcore about when you get a coral in about dipping and or quarantining? Like, how crazy do you get with it?
Depends on if it has a little acro crab living in it. If it's a maricultured colony.
Isn't it true that they'll eat up some of these things?
Maybe
the acro crabs, they will protect the colony they're in, but I mean, if there's acro flatworms on the concrete base of a maricultured colony I bring home, at this point, acro flatworms is kind of irrelevant in my display tank. But yeah, I dip any coral I bring home and cut the base off.
Now we don't know if the trapezius crabs eat acro eating flatworms.
Yeah, they
protect like the pinch starfish who are coming to feed on the crab and things like that. But I don't think we know at all if they help. They might. I don't know, but we don't know for sure.
I have an acro flatworm that lives in this table here. That's literally 8 inches across, and that acro flatworm the acro crab spends its life in the same spot. It never moves. It doesn't do anything other than just collect food that floats by.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
we used to collect those and try to get them. We were trying everything with acro eating flatworms, and there just seems to be no real way. I think though that with all the dipping that a lot of hobbyists are doing and a lot of stores are doing, I think that's got to be responsible for the reduction in these two pests that we've seen over the last 10 years.
Yeah, a lot more aquacultured coral that are coming in as little 1-inch frags in a bag at $100 an inch. That helps. The new guys.
Uh,
I mean, wouldn't you say though that if we're not collecting so many wild caught acros that we're kind of moving away from so many pests, or do they still have a real stranglehold in people's collections?
I think Rich is right. I think they're getting lesser and lesser in the hobby. So no, I've delivered corals to Mark Levinson a couple times over the last 3 years, and I feel confident everything I've brought to him is absolutely Acropora free because they're small frags and they're on a clean frag plug. They're in an isolated system, and he's not hollering at me 9 months later. You gave me acro flatworms. Oh my God, you're the worst friend ever.
boom, 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 boom.
Hey, Richard, this podcast is powered by PolypLab. Do you have any
PolypLab?
PolypLab, powered by PolypLab.
Powered by PolypLab.
Powered by PolypLab.
Powered by PolypLab.
So loud.
What PolypLab products do you use in your secret home lab behind you there, Ben?
I know, look at that. I have a shower curtain with a rendering of your secret home lab. So I have the canister of gluelets. Look at these little super glue containers. It's like Garbage Pail Kids, but it's what Richard, what are you doing? You got your back turned towards me.
Well, no one could see that till you pointed it out.
No, but so I got these PolypLab little super glue tubes, and I like them. They're pretty small because every time I get larger containers of super glue, I always muck up the tip. And so these are kind of like you can do about, it depends what you're doing, but probably 2 frags with 1 tube and then chunk it. You don't get a mucked up tube in it. You get a whole bunch of them. I don't know. What's the count on these? Like 50 of them.
50,000.
50,000. It's like a endless bucket right here.
It's a good product if you want to gluelet. It's a good gluelet.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I use Reefroids and Polyp Booster. I put the Polyp Booster in, and it kind of gets the small polyp corals to open up, and then I can feed them the Reefroids, and they eat it up deliciously. I've used that stuff as one of the major feeds for brand new baby corals when I was spawning corals, and it works pretty well. I like that product a lot.
I also use this. It's called PolypLab. It's called One. So it's a calcium, alkalinity, magnesium, all-in-one solution. And in my opinion, it's great for really small tanks. The dosage is on the back. But anyway, so it comes to you dry, so it ships cheap. You fill it up with RO water and you shake it, and then it comes down a little bit. You fill it up again. But anyways, you can't dose this. You can't use a doser with this because you have to shake it before you use it. It kind of falls out of solution. But it works real well on really small tanks. You just use it. The instructions are for a capful. And so I like using this on tanks probably below 50 gallons.
They also have this right here. This is the thing you put on your cell phone, and then you put this lens on it, and it helps you take better pictures of your aquarium. And it comes with 3 different lenses of 3 different colors that you can use depending on what your light spectrum is set at the time. So you can get pictures that look better than just your phone pictures will look, because your phone doesn't do well with blues and stuff. So it comes with 3 different lenses. It's pretty great. So PolypLab, they got products that we use. They support our show and support diversity, which is fantastic. And they've got a whole bunch of other products that we can't talk about because Ben and I haven't used them. But go to their website, check them out, and see what you think of their products.
Powered by PolypLab.
Powered by PolypLab. Boom.
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 Yeah, and I think there's still a ton of wild caught stuff coming in. I think there's still mariculture doesn't mean that it's pest free. So you could still get them. I think the problem is when they get in and they spread out and get a foothold in your system. And you don't know what's happening. Because I remember the first time I got them, everyone across the country seemed to kind of get them in the same 6-month period. And it was like, what the hell? And I remember it happening and going, what is going on with these corals? What is it? And then doing a freshwater dip and seeing all them come off. It was like, what the fuck is this? And then the war, just started and everyone doing all kinds of stuff. And
Yeah,
then
when
Randy
first,
said based them, and it was like, oh.
yeah. And you're right, Rich. When acro flatworms hit the hobby, we thought red bugs were the end of the day. I mean, now people look at red bug and go, yeah, whatever. It's definitely not a problem. So
yeah, we haven't talked about red bugs yet. Is it people are still doing the same treatment, right? The interceptor.
Yep.
So,
I own some.
As long as you can get that. I've got some really old stuff.
Yeah,
and even that treatment was amazing. So Dustin Dorton figured out that a dog dewormer would kill red bugs.
How in the hell does that happen?
So he was working at ORA at the time, and he looked at what the dewormer did and thought that might work on these little tiny red bugs, these crustaceans. And he did some really thorough testing on it. And so, and he put it out there, and it was like, that is good testing. He had done it a dozen times or whatever, and he'd done it at different dosages, and this was his recommendation, and this was how to do it. And now, people have done it at double or triple the dose without a problem. If you use older, what is it called? Levamisol? No. Interceptor. Mine's older, so it doesn't seem to kill all my crabs and shrimp, but it does seem to kill the red bugs.
Huh.
There were people, I remember the first time doing it, like collecting all the trapezius crabs out of the acros, save the crabs, because I felt like such a jackass killing all these crabs, and making shrimp traps to pull all my shrimp out and stuff like that. So it's come a long way. But take a look. I think that's still up at reefs.org, or may move to reefs.com now. What Dustin wrote up was really it's the kind of stuff that we're not seeing for the acro eating flatworm treatments. It's just, there's no support for them. It's insane.
Yeah, there was one young man who was taking donations and he was going to do all sorts of great studies on it, and I think 6 months in he realized it was more than he had bargained for, to try to research this long term. And they're prolific. I mean, they're just like you guys were saying with the Monty eating nudibranchs, is how long can they live without a host?
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing. You get pyramid snails on your clams, and your clams all die, and a year and a half later you still have pyramid snails in your system. It's like, how the heck? So,
yeah. You're like, wait,
Mother
what else
Nature
do you
will
guys
survive.
eat? Stop it.
They're eating your snails.
Apparently Astrea snails. They'll hitchhike in on those. So watch out for your Astrea snails if you have clams.
Oh my God, pyramid snails suck.
Man, those were a big deal in the 90s. I can't believe that people still talking about them.
It depends where you get them.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I think we're just better at all of these things. If I see acro eating flatworms, which I haven't in a long time, what would I do in my tank? I would probably pull the affected colony, put it somewhere, chop it so there was no eggs, and I would dip it, and dip it again, and then dip it again, and then dip it again, and then put it back over 4 weeks.
And then cross your fingers that it's not on the other colony 8 or 12 inches away.
The last time I tangled with them in my tank, they seemed to be very specific. I think what was happening in the past is that we didn't recognize them, and then they blow up. And once they blow up, then maybe they spread to other colonies. But if you've got one colony that's got them, and it's only a few, you're probably fine. You can deal with it.
Yeah. When I blow them around my fish tank, and I know that one escapes the fish brigade that's sitting there waiting, and it blows onto a monopora or down into the frog spawn or whatever, I don't worry about it. It's just like, well, it may survive long enough to make it back up to an acropora, but it'll probably be eaten by a wrasse or some other fish before it gets there.
In a way, all these problems, they're so similar in my head, what I have to do for my business, this reminds me of, like, you know, when you have an aptasia problem in a tank and you finally conquer it. And you know, I'm lucky in that I keep clients for a long time. It's like when you think you've conquered aptasia, I promise you, you have not. You wait around for a little bit and they will show back up, even if you don't add anything at all into the tank.
Keep talking. I have a tool for acro eating flatworms. I'll be right back. Keep talking.
It's just, you know, I don't know if all these pests that we talk about are similar, but you can't let your guard down once you think you've gotten rid of something. I mean, it's just something you need to store away in your brain, you know. And again, that's why I say, like, when you see a little aptasia, you know, we had that episode, you know, kill it before it gets big, you know, do something about it before it gets out of control.
And you're right. You see it all the time in your line of work, especially as whether it be algae or vermeted snails. I mean, there's a million pests in the hobby, and ultimately, you know, that they all just require work. I mean, I've told people, they go, "Oh, algae." I'm like, I've done the fluconase treatment on this tank unsuccessfully, and 3 weeks later, spent 4 hours on a Friday night with the toothbrush in my display tank, knocking the algae back enough so that my next fluconase trait, or
was it fluconazole?
I call it fluconase.
Yeah.
Well, yes. It's just a matter of, like I said, being active, being aware, and being diligent, and putting in the time.
Yeah, like staring at cyanobacteria is not going to make it go away.
I couldn't find my show and tell.
Increased flow, Ben. That is the old adage.
Yeah. Increased flow. Well, I mean, you know, it depends. What are you trying to keep? But especially SPS, yeah. I mean, you make it hard for stuff to keep a foothold. For algae, that's, you know, pockets of detritus floating away, you know, for all these other things. You know, a lot of these other creatures, though, are good. The flatworms are good at, you know, because the flow in our aquariums never matches what it is in the wild. And it makes you wonder, like, does that stuff, you know, does it get a better foothold in our aquariums just because stuff like that, because the flow could never match? So it's almost like, you know, acro eating flatworms in the wild could be like a background noise, where in our glass boxes, they can turn into plague proportions.
Yeah. So you should put masks on your corals. I was looking for my tool. I took one of those thin turkey basters that are available in the hobby, and I heated it up and bent it so it's at an angle, so you can spray, and you can bend it in a U, so you can turkey baste up underneath.
Huh.
So you can get into those nooks and crannies that can be hard to get
like
into.
a thing like Julian's thing.
There's a thinner, I forget who makes it, and I can't find mine. I also use it for feeding. It's just a thin turkey baster. I forget who makes it. And you heat it up but carefully, and you can bend it, and it works really well for a lot of stuff.
I remember that from many years ago, Rich. Rich has always been the mad scientist.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I go, here's a problem. What do we do about it? Oh, well, this.
Well, here's a tiny little tip. If you're bending stuff like that, some people think open flame, that doesn't work that good. A heating gun that you can get from Lowe's and Home Depot that you peel paint with. So a heating gun, or even a hair dryer, but that would take too long. But those, like a heat gun or a hair dryer, is better at bending it.
Yeah, you can also fill it with sand, is a great trick. Because then it won't collapse on itself.
Yeah.
But after you do it a few times, you know, I just do it over the stove. But you got
really?
But I'm a glass blower, so it's like
That's
I get how to heat it evenly.
Yeah.
And how
you don't sit there and wait for it to bubble and turn black and go, oh.
No, don't do that. Or send it to me, I'll do it for you.
Hey, let me do this with Duane here, because he's a bit of a handy man as well.
Do it, baby. Duane is super friggin' handy.
So I was recently at a buddy's house, and he had the Ecotech. What are the Ecotech dosers called? Is that Versa?
Yes.
Okay. So he had the Versas.
Yes.
And he was having a problem because he had, you know, they have John Guest fittings similar to this right here.
A speed fitting.
Where
there's a collar inside that you push the tube into, and then it grabs it. There's an O-ring that then gets pushed out and seals. And then there's teeth in there that don't let it pull out unless you release them.
So I haven't messed with a lot of Versas, but my buddy was saying, and I don't know if this is true or not, but that the Versa came with like flexible tubing, almost like aquarium like tubing. Is that true? Does anyone know? Do either of y'all know?
I have a Versa, but I don't remember what it came with.
So these really
Yeah,
work
I've seen
better.
a lot of the softer tubing work with it.
I suppose you could do that. I don't. So the problem he was having, it was sucking air bubbles into it, and he was not getting a good solid pull. But in my experience, though, that works better with that like 1/4 inch RO tubing. Really, a more rigid tubing is what works better in there. I don't think soft tubing works that great. So my little tip is, if you're still, you could either run a harder tubing, get rid of your soft tubing and run a harder tubing to your piece of equipment that you're trying to do. Or, you do realize that they do sell these little stem times a barb right here that you can put into there. And that gives you the rigid part for it to make a better connection. And then put your soft connection on here, rather than trying to push a soft tubing into this deal. That works better if you're still wanting to stay with a soft tubing.
Yeah, I used to do a piece of RO tubing, and
Yeah.
then I would heat it up and then push a piece of rigid tubing into the RO tubing. And so it would fit in snugly, and then use my aquarium tubing onto that rigid 1/4 inch tubing.
And that's
Pain in
okay.
the
And
ass.
I
Pain in
don't
the
know if
ass.
I'm being a purist, but this is like, but that's also, Richard, that's like a big no-no for me, because I think Duane will maybe agree with me on
That
this.
sounds just insane.
It does, right? Like, I'm
I
a
said-
stickler for this.
I also said used to.
But this is, Duane,
I
you
took
gotta
4
understand,
kinds
this
of
is,
tubing to make it fit.
this is where
Well, if
Richard
you're
and I
under the-
clash sometimes.
If you're under the damn house and you got something that needs to be fixed now, I'm going to fix it now. And if it turns out that the now fix holds, why the hell do I want to go change it?
And I get that,
Rich,
but
as much as I give you shit for it, I do it too.
I know. Ben's the only one.
But you understand from the perspective of that, like, I'm inside of a $5 million house and I can't do that.
Yeah, but you've seen, I have a fucking crawl space that's the ground. So what do I
Yeah.
care?
For sure.
Yeah.
But-
Is that true? Am I lying?
But if
No,
I'm in a $5
lying.
million house, I'm going to do this. Or if I just, and you're right, some of your fixes, like if you heat up, soft tubing and push it over RO tubing, technically, sure, that can hold. But if I get a call in the middle of the night, and I carry general liability insurance, but the thing with general liability insurance is I ain't trying to use it. You know what I mean? I don't want to claim. So,
Yeah.
I'll do stuff like this, and sure, your way could work, but this is never going to come off.
You know what? If I was in a $5 million house doing it, I wouldn't be using soft tubing.
I don't know. I don't know if I trust you on that.
I'd be using RO tubing, because soft tubing can kink and it can tear, and all kinds of stuff can happen to it. And I don't want that to happen.
Yeah, Ben, and part of it too is I'm a glorified handyman by trade. That's what I do for a living. And some of it's just ignorance. We don't necessarily know that these parts exist. So you sharing that is a great thing. Thanks for sharing that with the hobby.
Yeah. I mean, I guess
see
If
stuff like
you're
that.
going to use push fittings, do yourself a favor and take 20 minutes and go to some push fitting websites, even just Amazon, and see all the different kinds of connections they have. There are so many things that are really, really, really useful. There's little bulkheads that they make. There's adapters. There's step ups. There's step downs. There's stems like that. There's stems that adapt like that. There's all kinds of stuff. And you can order a kit now that's got everything you need in it. It's got like a sampler of everything. You should always have, unions around, and you should always have valves around.
Hey,
You should always have T's around, because you use them all the clip, boom, put it back together, and you're done.
You just brought up a thing that I have another little tip for. So the little tiny 1/4 inch bulkheads that you can use with RO tubing, what works great to use those. Now, I would tell you, technically, you shouldn't really use those in a position where they're underwater, like the standard bulkheads that we use. But I would also say for that little bulkhead that you can use tap water garden hose, not O-rings, but the little washers that you would use on a brass end of a garden hose. You can go get those. You can get them on Amazon, or you can get them from a big box store. But because those little bulkheads don't come with any sort of gasket, because they're not intending you to do that.
You could also just go to the hardware store and get gaskets.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is garden hose gaskets work well as a gasket on those bulkheads?
I'm saying they make every size gasket you can ever think of if you go to a decent hardware store.
Yeah.
So whatever size little mini bulkhead you've got, go and get a gasket for it. But also be careful, because sometimes you can't tighten those little ones up the way you can a big one. And
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Just don't really, try not to put them in a position where there's like 15 gallons of water sitting above it,
because the gasket can push it off the threads.
Yeah.
What kind of beef do you guys have today? What's your beef?
So Duane, let's do this. Do you have a beef?
I do. My beef after 15 years in the hobby, as I get tired of the new hobbyists that go online and say, how often do you have to clean your glass? I have to clean my glass once a week, and it's so much work. I'm tired of it. I'm thinking,
once a week.
You're growing an underwater flower garden. Did you expect that there wasn't going to be no algae or no byproduct from massive amounts of light and fertilizer?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Ben and I were talking about this before we started recording. Because we have a love-hate, I have a love-hate relationship with forums. I think after a while you just have to not go on forums.
Yeah. And
they're not for you.
I don't do it a lot anymore, because after 15 years, I feel like I'm done teaching. Every new hobbyist gets in and we learn all this about alkalinity and phosphate, nitrate, and we want to regurgitate that and help and share and tout our knowledge. And it gets to the point where I'm tired of debating someone who doesn't know what they're talking about, and I don't have the time and energy to prove myself right. Typically, I just show a picture and say, I know what I'm talking about, trust me. And everyone says, oh, you show off, humble brag. Like, I don't
think it's that you don't want to teach. I think it's you don't want to argue.
Yeah.
Hey guys, let me interject something here.
No,
because I don't give a shit.
No,
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it.
Okay.
It's not. So I have a soft spot in my heart for teaching, for helping brand new hobbyists, and brand new hobbyists will almost always listen to me, because that sounds arrogant, but I'm well versed. I'm well versed in teaching people from the 108 years that I've been in this hobby. No, I mean, a decade of working in 5 different stores. Like, that's what the fuck I did for a living, was teach people what to do. So what we don't like is teaching someone what to do in the presence of other numbskulls that want to put in their 2 cents that's not correct. That's what's annoying. If you're one-on-one with a brand new hobbyist that's willing to listen to you, that's fun, because you're downloading all your info into them. But then, you get on a forum, you got the peanut gallery. Oh, I do this. It's like, dude, that's what's annoying. That part is annoying.
I won't argue with that. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I get a lot of PMs or Facebook Messenger PMs. Literally before we started, somebody showed me a picture of their cloudy tank, and it was quick. It was like, that's a bacterial bloom. Add some Microbacter 7 or some Dr. Tim's or something. I mean, it's or just wait it out. Either way, that's a pretty simple one. But I'm sure you guys get that too. I know that you're on Facebook and active.
Day.
So
Every day.
I used to think that somehow we could get ahead of it. We could, this knowledge would, get out there, and then people would know it. But I think people have to discover it for themselves. I understand getting on forums, when you're intermediate and you want to help, because teaching is a great way for you to keep learning, right? Because you explain it in a way that you may not have thought about it before, and then it opens up a new avenue to go for you to go research or think about, or if if somebody asks you a question. I think that's great. I think a big part of the issue with the online stuff is just the annoyance factor and the bickering and the fighting and I don't want to fight anymore,
Well, good for you for staying active, because I mean the hobby's always changing, and if I just check out and don't stay relevant and stay interested and engaged, the hobby's going to leave me behind. I'm going to be this guy that knows how to grow SPS, and I do it successfully with 10-year-old equipment and 10-year-old ideas, and I'm not moving forward with the hobby.
When I watch, when I look online and I watch the hobby, and again, this is what I do for a living for the last 54 years, but but I get that feeling too. It's so funny. I mean, I'm 46. I've been doing this since I was 16. And I get a feeling almost every day, like, am I out of touch? I promise you, I get that feeling. I do. Because I see people making these crazy cabinets for their Neptune Apex. Yeah. And it's not something that I do. And so my immediate reaction is, that's dumb. And then I like, oh shit, I'm the old guy with black socks, like shaking my fist at the clouds. Like, I'm the one that's out of touch. This is what people are doing now.
You are out of touch, Ben.
Yeah. And it's always that's a great computer you built. Now let's see you grow coral. Let's see what you've done in 2 years. And a lot of those guys don't come back and show off what they've done in 2 years.
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of a beef too, is when someone is like, I got a this, or I'm doing this. And then it's like radio silence afterwards. Like, successful, not successful. Obviously not successful, because you haven't said shit about it in 6 months.
Well,
maybe the secret. Oh, go ahead, Duane.
I was gonna say that's the problem with Facebook as opposed to the forums, because it's hard to just keep a reef tank thread, a diary that people can go back to and you can easily access and update. Like I said, Richard's on the forums and he's fighting it, but that's definitely probably a better method of relaying information and documenting things.
I don't think forums are a good way to share information.
No?
I think first of all, I think, Duane, if you want to keep up on what's going on the cutting edge, which is 3% of the posts, just lurk. Don't engage, right?
Yeah.
Fight off the idea that you're there to help, because that'll take over your life, right? This happens with every, you don't see Bruce Carlson on the forums, you don't see Julian Sprung on the,
Yeah.
We just at some point it's like, oh God, I don't want to do this anymore. And I put together my website with all the articles, and it's like somebody asks me a question or says something, it's like, here's the article I wrote on that.
Yeah.
And then they don't want to read the article, and it's
they're like, but what does it say? You're like, I don't know, fucking read it.
It says words, read it to the end too, because there's important parts in the whole thing. It's not just
I was trying to get re-engaged back into the forums, and then that fucking Reef Beef channel just turned me away from Reef to Reefs because of all the controversy last year. So I don't even do that one anymore, and I haven't really jumped onto the new one you guys keep talking about. So
well,
there's problems with that too.
They're just tough, man. And I think threads are a terrible way to share information. I think they're good for a conversation that's ongoing, but I think, or I've got a question about something, somebody can answer it. But for any kind of depth of knowledge, I think they're terrible. Just like videos, I think, are terrible. You don't have the relevant information in front of you in a way you can digest it. And if you've got to go through a 100-page thread to try to glean some information, you're just doomed. Get some of the books and read the books and read the articles, because those are focused with one person's perspective, rather than all these sub discussions that just, because you go, what do I do for algae? And then, somebody's, Rich, what do you do for algae? And I go, herbivores, here's an article about it. And, I don't see any tanks that just control for phosphate that have algae go away. That's not how algae works anyway. That's not how corals work. That's not how the system works. They use the same stuff to grow as your corals do. So if you can grow one, you can grow the other. So get herbivores, right? There's the short version of that. And then somebody goes, well, just pee in your tank. And then somebody goes, well,
banana peels.
I used to super glue things. And then now it's just a big,
I put a boiled chicken in my reef and it went away.
Yeah. And then, so how does that person then know what to do? And I'm just, I'm enjoying the bickering less.
My prediction is that 10 years from now, we're going to be back on here, the same group. We're going to be bitching about how Elon Musk's Neuralink is not a good way to share information in the hive mind about.
I think you're right. But I think forums have never been a good way to share information. I think forums are a good way.
It's more like social hour.
Well, no, there's part of that, but I think it's a good way for people to express what they think about a particular subject. I think the power is not the person looking for information, except for discrete questions. The power is for someone like Duane 8-10 years ago, who was like, hey, I'm excited about this stuff, and this is what I think about it, because it solidifies the methodology Duane wants to use. It clarifies it and makes it better. And at a certain point, there's no more for you to talk about that. You get it and you understand it and it makes sense and the results are behind you. So, why do you want to talk about algae problems with anybody? Why do you want to talk about, oh my God, aquascaping or gluing? Or it's like, you got to just go do it for 2 years yourself and you're going to suck at it. We all sucked at it for so long. There's a learning curve and you're terrible and be terrible and then you're less terrible.
I mean, I think right off the bat, someone that's like, I want to be a reef hobbyist, you've got to know that it's mental heavy lifting all the way down.
Yeah.
And time.
If you can't handle that.
And money.
Yeah.
And money. Well, we could argue about that. It was going on 20 years ago when I got back into the hobby about, is the hobby too expensive? And, some lights are $800 now, but I remember buying a Luminarc with a ballast and a bulb and that was $500. So it's like, it's not with no controllability at all. So it's not really even that much more expensive, which is insane, but it is expensive. It does cost money. You can do it on the cheap, but do you really want to do it on the cheap? Do you want to do your dog on the cheap, or do you want to be able to take your dog to the vet when your dog is broken?
Yeah, like don't feed your dog old Roy.
If you can't afford to take a dog to the vet, maybe you shouldn't get a dog. And I understand that only means that people who can afford to take their dogs to the vet can have a dog, but maybe that's okay. Instead of going, I can't afford this dog anymore, so I'm going to take it to the shelter or kill it. I don't. And then your animals are the same way. If something goes wrong with your animals, shouldn't you throw a bunch of money at it because that's what it takes to get it fixed? We barely talked about freaking Duane's system. We'll have to have Duane back on.
I was gonna say, I'd be happy to come back. We could talk about growing algae. I'm good at that too.
Wait, this was all a ploy for Duane to be on the next 5 shows in a row.
Well, we'll have to figure a different hour. My wife will probably get mad if I hog up the living room 5 days in a row, 5 weeks in a row.
Thank you, Duane's wife.
Thank you, Robin.
Okay, Robin. Thank you, Robin.
She made me another whiskey rocks while we were doing this.
Wonderful.
She's a good wife. I appreciate her.
Look at that.
All right, Duane, I think we're going to let you go. Thank you so much for being on the show.
It's great.
Thank you, brother.
That was
always fun to hang out with you, Rich. And Ben, I hope to see you at least in the Dallas Aquashella in October.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And don't bring your family and run away like in 30 seconds like you did 2 years ago.
Did I do that?
Yeah.
I bumped into you and Mark, and you're like, well, let's
Yeah.
talk.
Then you said, I gotta go. I got my family. My kids gotta leave.
I
I gotta
never
leave
bring my-
now.
I think that was the one time I brought my family. I'm never doing that again.
And don't ever do that again.
They're real bummers.
So we'd like to thank saltwaterquarium.com and
PolypLab.
and PolypLab for powering us. And Duane, thank you so much for your time. We will definitely have you back on. Have a great night, man.
Right on. You guys have a good night.
Thank
Thanks.
you, Duane.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Suck a duck.
Suck a duck.
Suck a duck.
Hey, you like my Qui-Gon haircut?
Yes, I do. Anuses.
I'm the Lord of Anus. Anus. I prefer it to be said anus.
Do you have a fucking fan blowing on your hair?
Well,
You look
I
like-
normally have.
It's
like a fucking.
You look like you're one of the Bee Gees. You're gonna sing shadow dancing. All of a sudden, you're singing Grease. What are you doing?
Oh wait, yeah. What the fuck am I doing?
Ooh, 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 honey.
Yeah. You're all I need. Why am I singing Grease though? That's stupid.
Through the night, shadow dancing. But it should be reefing stuff. Change all the
Reefing.
words.
Yeah. I am reefing.
Get out, Duane.
Get out of
Okay.
here,
Hold on.
dude.